harnessing the Primal Sources and fighting for glory. That's right, it's the Dragon Prince, Tales of Xadia. Based on the hit Netflix show The Dragon Prince, Tales of Xadia explores the epic stories of tragedy and triumph from the world of Xadia. One player takes on the role of the narrator, the presenter of scenes, locations, and a variety of non-player characters. Everyone else takes on the role of player characters, recording their personalities, history, and vital statistics in a character journal. Over the course of one or many games, players adventure in the land of Xadia, creating stories of bravery, cunning, and heroism. Based on the Cortex system, Tales of Xadia is a narrative-based RPG. Players work with the narrator to create events and plotlines in the shared story. Whenever a moment of uncertainty would occur within the story, both the narrator and a player will roll dice to determine the narrative result. Before we look at characters in detail, let's review the dice system of the game. Cortex uses 5 die types, each abbreviated by their individual number of sides: 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. The roller generally builds a number of these dice into a group known as the dice pool. After rolling, in most dice tests of the game, the roller chooses 2 results to add together for their total. That total is used in different ways to determine the outcome of the uncertainty. In some cases, a third die, known as the effect die, might be used to gauge the impact of a total result. We'll go over how totals and effect dice are used in just a sec. Additionally, the dice have a hierarchy that can be altered based on the game effects or narrator discretion. Each die has a step value, ranked by the number. So stepping a 6-sided die up 1 step increases it to an 8-sided die. The same applies to stepping down, lowering a 6-sided die by 1 step, making it a 4-sided die. Let's take a look at a character journal. Beyond the basics like a name and physical description, each character may also have an associated Primal Source, one of the 6 fundamental elements of magic, of course: moon, sky, sun, earth, ocean, and stars. Characters are mostly comprised of traits. Traits are split into various types. Attributes, which come in 6 flavors: agility, awareness, influence, intellect, spirit, and strength. Each attribute, like all traits, also has an associated die representing how much of an effect that trait has on the story. For attributes, a 4 is considered underdeveloped, while a 12, chef's kiss, world class. This isn't to say a low attribute die means that the trait is severely flawed, or a max attribute is the strongest in existence. Rather, it reflects the amount of time and attention that character has spent developing and prioritizing that attribute. Many starting characters have 6s or 8s for most of these values, with perhaps a 10 to reflect their most prioritized attribute. Another type of trait, values, is divided into 6 types: devotion, glory, justice, liberty, mastery, and truth. The die associated with each of these represents a range of devotion from the character, from barely interested to supremely committed. Each value has a value statement attached to it, which describes how the character thinks or feels about that value. Players can use the value statement to help roleplay their character. They can also question the value statement while playing, which reflects how characters might change and grow in their beliefs. Notably, all values have a cumulative total of 15 steps. When one value is raised through advancement or narrative effect, another must be lowered. Distinctions comprise the character's backstory and personality, divided into 3 types: the character's background, kindred or ancestry, their training, vocation or role, and a memorable quirk or feature. The distinction traits contain wording that reflects a potential downside for each, allowing the storytellers to add tension to scenes by using a character's own background against their goals. Distinctions also come with special effects, which we'll explain shortly. Assets are the people and items not inherent to the character's personality. They might be friendly creatures, magical items, or even personal relationships. Assets have die ratings just like all traits, but assets begin at 6. Rather than reflecting the strength of the item, however, the die value instead represents the character's connection to the item. Two characters might possess the same asset, but at different ratings, demonstrating their established connections. Characters can have plenty of items and know lots of people, but assets have a higher level of personal importance. Specialties represent a narrow field of expertise, such as swordplay, politics, or even primal magic. The associated die reflects how much time, effort, and investment that character has in that knowledge or skill. From 6, which is trained, to 12, Grandmaster. That's the basics of characters, so now let's look at how to apply these values and traits within the story. Rolling dice generally happens in one of 3 ways: tests, contests, and challenges. Tests occur when players roll dice to determine the outcome of a situation, resulting in some narrative form of success or failure. Contests occur between 2 characters, either player or non-player, and involve tests against each other. Challenges are a series of tests used to reflect an ongoing risk or maybe a time-sensitive event. Challenges generally involve several, if not all, of the player characters. Since a test is the root of all these 3 types, let's look at those in more detail. During a test, the narrator first sets the difficulty by selecting 2 dice from the test difficulty chart on page 88 of the rules. Based on the story and context, the narrator decides how challenging the test would be, from very easy to very hard. Additionally, the narrator may pick up 1 or more dice based on other factors, such as a narrator's character's traits, an NPC's distinction, or any other element which might make things trickier. After rolling their collected dice pool, the narrator takes the 2 highest die results and adds them together to announce the difficulty value. This is the number the player must exceed on their roll in order to have a successful outcome. Working with the narrator, the player provides a story-based reason to apply their traits, whether it's the charming power of their influence attribute or the discipline of their mastery value. They add die to their pool, roll them all, and select 2 results to add together and compare against the difficulty. If the player exceeds the difficulty, they succeed in their task. If they roll lower or equal to, they fail, potentially adding stress to the character. More on stress in a sec. Contests are very similar to tests, but reflect a conflict between a narrator character and a player character, or even between 2 player characters. In this case, the 2 parties roll their dice pools against each other, starting with the initiating character. If their opposition wishes to contest, they roll their pool, hoping to exceed the initial total. They may also back off after seeing the first roll, losing the contest and taking some stress. If the opposition exceeds the first total, the initiating character re-rolls their pool against the new difficulty set by the opposition's total. This continues back and forth until one party loses or withdraws. Challenges are extended obstacles requiring a number of tests to be passed in order to succeed. This might be sneaking past a camp of sleeping bandits, negotiating a truce between troubled kingdoms, or unweaving an intricate enchantment from a magical door. Challenges occur in rounds, the length of which varies depending on the challenge type. Each round could be a minute or a day. To start a challenge, the narrator builds a pool, beginning with the 2 difficulty dice, and then adds dice based on various factors. Players then take turns doing something within that challenge. The narrator rolls the challenge pool to set a difficulty for the player to overcome. The narrator chooses the first player in a challenge, but thereafter, players choose which player goes next. Challenges also allow players to reduce the narrator's challenge pool. See page 95 of the rules for more details on that. Some other important concepts within this game. The effect die is chosen from the dice pool after the dice picked for the total are added together. The effect die is used for things like overcoming challenge dice, creating assets, or inflicting stress dice on others. Only the size of the effect die matters. The result rolled on the effect die has no further use. If there is no effect die, the default is 4. Plot points represent luck and fortune and act as a narrative power for the players to use to accomplish interesting feats. All players start with 1 plot point at the beginning of the game and can earn more in a variety of ways, including stepping down on one of their dice on a roll or giving in on a contest. Spending plot points allows players to create temporary assets, add additional die results to their total, or even activate special effects. Special effects, or SFX, are the powers of distinctions in the game, one of which is Hinder, a special effect that comes with all distinctions. The Hinder special effect allows a player to gain a plot point by exchanging their distinction die with a 4-sided die. Stress is a negative trait type which comes in 6 flavors: afraid, angry, corrupted, exhausted, injured, and insecure. While characters don't have a die rating in these by default, they can gain stress by failing tests. Stress might also play into a narrator's role if it applies to the character's action. Stress can be reduced by resting, but if stress progresses beyond a 12-sided die, then trauma can set in. This semi-permanent stress requires more time and help to heal. I recommend a good therapist. Hitches are when a 1 is rolled on any die. That die cannot be used in a total, it's set aside. Narrators have the ability to activate hitches for narrative purposes, so beware. A heroic success is when the player exceeds a difficulty by 5 or more on their test, producing unexpected beneficial results in the story. And that's the basics of Tales of Xadia. For more on the world lore, magic system, and a huge collection of inspiring suggestions, see the Tales of Xadia Game Handbook. I'm Becca Scott, this is Good Time Society, and you have been an awesome guest. Stick around, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to see us play Tales of Xadia, check out the video with Amy Vorpal as our narrator. You can find a link in the description below. We'll see you there.